common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State under Joe Biden, saying that we are 1 to 2 weeks away, Iran is, from a nuclear bomb, that they are getting the fissile material, which is the key element. That is frightening. And joining us now is KT McFarland, of course, Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. KT, this policy of appeasement has led to this moment.
Yeah, you have to put it directly at the feet of the Biden administration. They enabled Iran. They made Iran rich because of high oil prices. They refused to enforce the sanctions, so Iran was allowed to sell oil all over the world. Their encouragement of Iran, somehow thinking that Iran is going to become a responsible stakeholder in the world community, they just got buffaloed and snookered at every single thing. So what we now have is an Iran who is calling all the shots in the Middle East, basically saying, I'm going to be a nuclear power. But there's a bigger picture here. It's not just Iran and the nukes. It's what's happening with Iran and Russia and China and North Korea, and what they're doing now that they sense this extraordinary weakness in the Biden administration, and really weakness in the entire Washington, D.C. governance structure. They're now all making their moves. Iran is going to develop nukes. It's going to say it's a nuclear power. Russia just yesterday sentenced the Wall Street Journal reporter for espionage and sentenced him to, 15, 20 years in prison. You're going to see China making moves, and even North Korea. They're all going to go now. They all smell blood, and they're all going to go.
John, you were talking about the line that you thought was really great from President Trump last night about the hostages. When
President Trump said, you better let the hostages go before I take the presidency.
Well, it's a playbook that Ronald Reagan made famous, right, where the Iranians had American hostages. They wouldn't release them. Then they released them when Ronald Reagan took office. It's the same thing as the Hamas, which is really just an arm of Iran. They have American hostages. They're not releasing them. Biden says he's negotiating with them, but nothing's happening. And as a result, we still have American hostages. Nobody's talking about, this is what makes me so mad, is that there are American citizens being held hostage by Hamas enriched by Iran enriched by Joe Biden, and yet Biden takes no responsibility for American citizens.
KT, what makes me really angry is the Suez Canal is closed. The Red Sea is closed because Iran has paid the Houthis. And we gave Iran the money to pay the Houthis. And I said to Secretary Pompeo when I had him on a couple of weeks ago, I said to Admiral Stavridis last week, why our Air Force or Navy can open it up in 3 days? Why doesn't the Commander-in-Chief do it? Are we going to hurt Iran's feelings?
Yeah, well, that's what they're worried about. They really think that if they appease and they cajole and they negotiate enough, that Iran is not going to be tough. Well, Iran is going to be tough. And the more weakness the president shows, the tougher they get.
They're laughing behind our back.
John, there was one point in the Trump administration where we found, we were reading some of the traffic, and it was later released publicly about what the Iranians were saying to each other while they were negotiating during the Obama administration. And the Iranians were saying, can you believe these idiots? They're giving us everything. They're conceding everything before we even ask. Well, the Iran advisors and the Obama administration are the same people advising Joe Biden.
Yeah, go ahead, Judge Weinberg.
KT, welcome back. I'll tell you what troubles me. It was nice that President Trump made that remarks about when he comes in. The problem is if they have nuclear weapons in the next couple of weeks, that's the game changer. That takes our leverage away. That takes Israel's leverage away. That takes Western civilization's leverage away. It's the ultimate game changer. What do you say about that?
Well, it's even worse than that, Judge, because the Saudis have said if Iran gets nuclear weapons, they have no choice. They'll get nuclear weapons. Turkey will say, well, we need nuclear weapons, too. Everybody in the Middle East is going to get their own nuclear weapons. Now, can the Saudis invent them, develop them, have the sense? No, but they'll buy them. They'll buy them from Pakistan. They'll buy them from North Korea. So you could well have in a couple of months' time a Middle East where everybody's got their own nukes. And that's the Middle East. They shouldn't even.
We made the OPEC nations so wealthy. What does it cost to buy a nuclear bomb from North Korea? $100 million, $200 million. It's chump change for them.
It is chump change for them, and that's the worry. Is that nobody's looking at the money part of it. Washington never thinks of the money. John, you're a businessman. You're in New York. Always follow the money. Well, follow the money. What happened? Biden made Iran rich. Iran developed nuclear weapons. Iran paid for its terrorist groups. What did Donald Trump do? Donald Trump bankrupted Iran. Iran's nuclear program was stopped. Iran didn't give money to the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran didn't have any money to give. And that's why Iran was kept in this box. Donald Trump can't go into that White House fast enough.
Yeah, Ed Cox.
Yeah, Katie, with respect to Ukraine, J.D. Vance, ultimate MAGA man, and I saw a much more subtle view from him in an interview. That is a neutral Ukraine, which Henry Kissinger, you will know, is for, and because of the bloody stalemate here, neither side's going to win. Why should we be paying for a bloody stalemate? Let's have a settlement with a neutral, not Western, not pro-Russian, but a neutral, like Austria was during the Cold War. What do you think of that?
You could probably even get a better deal than that. Again, remember, Trump said last night, he said, I'm going to drill, baby, drill. I'm going to drive the price of oil down. We're going to be the dominant. We are going to set the price of global oil. That bankrupts Iran, that bankrupts Russia. It forces Russia to the negotiating table over Ukraine. And Trump will force Ukraine to the negotiating table. At this point, you're right. And it's a stalemate. This is World War I. This is trench warfare. Nobody's winning. This is at best a war of attrition. The only person who can win in this, the only country, is Ukraine. Not that they'll never win the war, but they could win the peace. And they could win the peace because once the fighting stops, the world will rush to invest in Ukraine and embrace Ukraine into the world economic community. In 10 years' time, Ukraine is as rich as Poland. Meanwhile, where is Russia 10 years after the fighting stops? Bankrupt, isolated. Nobody's going to invest in Russia.
KT, I want to also kind of pivot as we're talking back to Iran a little bit. The shooter, it still is baffling to me. There were major threats against President Trump, also Mike Pompeo, a number of these people. And yet there were all these huge security lapses. And also we're finding out, Michael Waltz came out a little bit ago and he was saying that the shooter had 3 encrypted foreign phones. I mean, he sounds like a troubled kid, but what was he doing with foreign phones? I mean, there seems to be some stuff out there that's very concerning. First of all, obviously security breakdowns vis-a-vis Iran, but also who knows what else is out there.
Well, and what Congressman Waltz is referring to, and he and I have talked about this, is that in addition to, and perhaps separate from, but maybe not separate from, the assassination attempt against President Trump, we know Iran has upped the ante. We know that they've put Trump in their crosshairs. We know that Mike Pompeo, Robert O'Brien, the former national security advisor, several other people are on their hit list. And so with all that foreknowledge, why the intelligence didn't lead them to increase security and put President Trump with President Trump should have presidential level security coverage, not.
I think he does now, but he didn't have it till now.
Does now.
Yeah.
He did not have it.
KT, the biggest threat to Iran's existence in Iran's mind is President Trump. So I'm still scared for President Trump.
Iran is terrified because they know the minute Trump comes in, he'll do what he did last time.
They go broke again.
They go broke again. And you know who's the biggest threat to the mullahs? Is the people of Iran. They will not tolerate. They're an educated, sophisticated society. They will not tolerate being bankrupt and pushed around and having their whole standard of living decline.
But they certainly don't fear a Washington administration right now.
No, not a chance. They're just pushing around. But here's the problem, is that Iran, Russia, North Korea, China, they know the window is closing. They now know, as the world does, Donald Trump is going to be elected. He's going to probably have a landslide election. And they know that when Trump comes in, it's curtains for them. So I think that they're seeing, if you excuse the pun, but they're seeing that window of opportunity closing. I think we've entered a period of maximum vulnerability for the next several months.
We love you, and thank you for coming on and keeping the American people informed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.